Your Honor, my client has been the primary breadwinner throughout this marriage while his wife spent her days at Pilates and charity luncheons. My soon-to-be ex-husband's lawyer delivered this opening statement with the confidence of a man who'd never bothered to actually investigate the claim. But then again, why would he, when for 7 years, I'd played the role of trophy wife so perfectly that even I sometimes forgot it was an act? The mediation room smelled like old coffee and disappointment, the kind of sterile space where marriages went to die. I sat across from Derek, watching him lean back in his chair with that familiar smirk, the one that said he'd already won. He'd worn his best suit, the Tom Ford I'd bought him for his birthday last year, back when I still believed we could salvage this. Mrs. Aurora, the mediator, Judge Harrison, addressed me with barely concealed impatience. Your financial disclosure forms seem incomplete. You've listed your occupation as homemaker, but there are some inconsistencies we need to address. Derek snorted. What inconsistencies? She hasn't worked a day since we got married. I've funded her entire lifestyle, the yoga classes, the shopping sprees, the spa days. Hell, I even paid for that little charity she plays around with. My lawyer, Diane Chen, touched my arm gently, our prearranged signal to stay quiet. We'd rehearsed this moment a dozen times. Let him talk. Let him boast. Let him bury himself in his own arrogance. Mr. Mitchell makes $400,000 annually as a marketing executive, Derek's lawyer continued, shuffling papers dramatically. Modest? Derek laughed. That's generous. Gemma here probably doesn't even understand what an investment portfolio is. I tried explaining compound interest to her once. She asked if it was a new Pilates move. Judge Harrison made a note, his expression neutral. Mrs. Aurora, do you have anything to add regarding the assets? Diane squeezed my arm harder. Not yet. No, Your Honor, I said softly, playing the role one last time. The confused wife, overwhelmed by financial complexity. The truth was so much sweeter. It started 8 years ago, before I even met Derek. I was working at Goldman Sachs, grinding through 100-hour weeks in their real estate investment division. I was good, really good. By 26, I was the youngest VP in the department, managing commercial property investments worth 9 figures. Then I met Derek at a charity gala. He was charming, successful, everything I thought I wanted. When he proposed after 6 months, I was swept up in the romance of it all. You don't need to kill yourself at Goldman anymore, he'd said, sliding the ring onto my finger. I make more than enough. Why don't you take some time off? Enjoy life a little? It seemed romantic at the time. What I didn't recognize was the first red flag, his need to be the provider, the successful one, the one who mattered. I left Goldman, but I didn't stop working. I just got creative about it. The first property was almost an accident. A former colleague called about a distressed office building in Queens, great bones, terrible management, bleeding tenants. The ask was $2.3 million, and I had exactly that in my trust fund from my grandmother, money Derek never knew existed because he'd never asked about my family's finances. I bought it through an LLC, Aurora Holdings. Innocent enough. Could be anything. 6 months of renovations, new management, and aggressive tenant recruitment later, the building was worth $3.8 million and generating $40,000 monthly in profit. How was Pilates? Derek would ask when I came home from 12-hour days managing contractors. Exhausting, I'd reply, which wasn't technically a lie. The second property followed within a year. Then a third. I reinvested every penny of profit, leveraging each success into the next opportunity. While Derek thought I was at charity committee meetings, I was negotiating with commercial tenants. While he believed I was shopping, I was touring properties with my acquisitions team. My charity work became my cover story. The Aurora Foundation, which actually did donate to women's shelters, also happened to share office space with Aurora Holdings, Aurora Development, and Aurora Commercial Management. One receptionist, different phone lines. You're late again, Derek would complain when I came home at 9. What could possibly take so long at a charity meeting? You wouldn't understand, I'd say, letting him interpret that however he wanted. It's complicated. He'd roll his eyes. Of course it is. Everything's complicated when you don't understand basic business principles. By year 3 of our marriage, I owned 12 properties. By year 5, 28. I had a staff of 43 people who thought it was hilarious that my husband believed I spent my days at yoga. Your secret identity is the best part of this job, my CFO, Marcus, once said. Mild-mannered trophy wife by night, real estate mogul by day. Just remember, I'd remind him, nobody finds out until I'm ready. The tipping point came last year. Derek had always been condescending, but success made him cruel. His promotion to CMO inflated his ego beyond recognition. Suddenly, my little charity was an embarrassment. My lack of career was setting a bad example. He started introducing me at events as his better half, though not the earning half. The jokes got meaner. The comments more cutting. He'd lecture me about money in front of friends, explaining simple concepts as if I were a child. Gemma thinks APR is a fashion brand, he told his boss at a dinner party, while I smiled and sipped my wine, mentally calculating the IRR on my latest acquisition. The affairs started around the same time. His assistant first, cliché. Then a junior marketing manager who was so refreshing because she actually understands business. I knew about every single one. Private investigators are expensive, but I could afford the best. I documented everything, not out of jealousy, but out of pragmatism. Diane had been clear, adultery could impact asset division in New York under certain circumstances. When I finally filed for divorce, Derek seemed almost relieved. Probably for the best, he'd said. You can find someone more on your level. Maybe a personal trainer or something. Which brought us to this moment. This mediator's office. This performance. Your Honor, Derek's lawyer continued, we'd like to address the unusual transfers from my client's accounts over the past several years. Nearly $800,000 has been withdrawn in increments. We believe Mrs. Aurora has been hiding assets, possibly gambling or maintaining shopping accounts her husband doesn't know about. Derek nodded vigorously. She's always been terrible with money. Probably blowing it on handbags and shoes. Check her closet, it's worth more than most people's cars. Judge Harrison looked at me. Mrs. Aurora? Can you explain these withdrawals? Diane stood slowly. Your Honor, my client has been entirely transparent. Those withdrawals were investments in her business ventures. The room went silent. Business ventures? Derek's lawyer scoffed. She hasn't worked in 7 years. Hasn't worked for an employer, Diane corrected. Mrs. Aurora has been quite busy. If I may? She pulled out a thick folder, the one we'd been saving for this exact moment. Aurora Holdings, Incorporated 8 years ago. Aurora Development, Incorporated 6 years ago. Aurora Commercial Management, Incorporated 4 years ago. Combined portfolio of 43 commercial properties across New York City and surrounding areas. Current valuation, $187 million. Annual revenue, $22 million. All built during the marriage, making them marital assets. The silence was deafening. Derek's face went through several colors, white, red, purple. That's impossible. She doesn't know anything about real estate. She can barely balance a checkbook. Actually, I said, finally dropping the act, I restructured your personal investment portfolio 3 years ago while you were sleeping off another bourbon night. Increased your returns by 23%. You're welcome. The shopping trips? His voice cracked. Property tours. The charity meetings? Tenant negotiations. The Pilates classes? Construction site visits. Turns out, steel-toed boots give you great calf definition. His lawyer frantically flipped through papers. This has to be fraud. Hidden assets. We'll contest, everything is meticulously documented, Diane interrupted. Every property acquired through legitimate LLCs, all taxes paid, all records available. Mrs. Aurora even invited Mr. Mitchell to several property closings. He declined, saying he didn't want to waste his time on her little hobbies. I pulled out my phone, scrolling to a saved text thread. Here's Derek's response when I asked him to co-sign for better loan terms 2 years ago. Babe, stop pretending you understand business. It's embarrassing. Judge Harrison reviewed the documents, his expression shifting from skepticism to something approaching admiration. This is quite impressive, Mrs. Aurora. Why keep it secret? Would you tell someone who constantly belittled your intelligence that you were out-earning them 20 to 1? I asked. Derek needed to feel superior. I gave him that gift. Consider it my charitable contribution to his ego. You manipulative, Derek started to stand, but his lawyer pulled him down. Your Honor, Diane continued, under New York equitable distribution law, my client is entitled to 50% of marital assets. However, given Mr. Mitchell's adultery, documented here in Exhibit B through F, and his financial misrepresentations, we believe a 60-40 split in my client's favor would be more appropriate. Adultery? Derek sputtered. You have no proof. I pulled out another folder. Jennifer, your assistant. MGM Grand, Las Vegas, last March. Heather from marketing. The St. Regis, multiple Thursdays. Should I continue? The investigator was very thorough. His lawyer whispered urgently in his ear. Reality was setting in. The house in Westchester, Diane continued, is actually owned by Aurora Holdings. Mrs. Aurora purchased it through the LLC and allowed Mr. Mitchell to believe it was in both names. His name appears nowhere on the deed. But I paid the mortgage. Derek protested. You paid rent, I corrected. Below market rate, actually. I took the loss as a tax deduction. Judge Harrison cleared his throat. Mr. Mitchell, do you have documentation proving ownership? Derek's lawyer shuffled papers desperately. We'll need time to review. I have the deed right here, Diane offered helpfully. Along with 7 years of rental agreements Mr. Mitchell signed without reading. He also signed a prenup, though he was too drunk to remember. It specifies that assets held in individual LLCs remain separate property. I watched Derek crumble in real time. The man who spent 7 years explaining basic math to me like I was a toddler was just realizing he been financially outmaneuvered at every turn. Why, he finally asked, looking at me directly for the first time in months. Why, let me think? Think I was stupid? Useless? Dependent? I leaned forward. Because you needed to believe it. Your entire identity was built on being the successful one, the provider, the big man. I loved you enough to let you have that fantasy. Right up until you loved your assistant more than your wife. The mediation wrapped up quickly after that. Faced with evidence of adultery, hidden assets on his side, turns out he'd been skimming from his expense account, and the prenup he'd forgotten signing, Derek's position crumbled. He walked away with his car, his personal belongings, and enough cash to start over, generously, more than he deserved. I kept everything else. How does it feel? Diane asked as we walked to the parking garage. Finally showing your hand? Honestly? Anticlimactic. I almost feel bad for him. Don't. He made his bed. With several women who weren't his wife, I agreed. Still, 7 years is a long time to pretend to be someone you're not. Were you pretending? Or were you just being selective about which parts of yourself you showed? I thought about it as I climbed into my Tesla, the one Derek thought was his gift to me, not knowing I owned the dealership. Maybe both. Maybe that's what marriage is, choosing which version of yourself to share. My phone buzzed. Marcus, my CFO, saw the news about the divorce. Drinks tonight to celebrate? Then another text, from a number I didn't recognize. This is Jennifer, Derek's former assistant. I just wanted to say I'm sorry. I didn't know about you. Really didn't know. He said you were basically roommates, that you didn't understand him. I feel so stupid. I stared at the message, then typed back, he didn't understand me either. We all see what we want to see. Good luck, Jennifer. 6 months later, I was standing in front of 200 people at the Women's Business Leadership Summit, telling my story. The moderator had asked about imposter syndrome, and I'd decided, finally, to be fully honest. For 7 years, I let someone I loved believe I was less than I was, I said. Not because I had to, but because it was easier than fighting to be seen. I built an empire in secret because being underestimated was less exhausting than being constantly challenged. Do you regret it? Someone in the audience asked. I regret that I felt it was necessary. I regret that my ex-husband's ego required my diminishment. But I don't regret building what I built. Sometimes the best revenge isn't proving someone wrong, it's succeeding so quietly that by the time they realize it, you're already too far ahead to catch. The headline in the business section the next day read, "The $200 million Secret, How One Woman Built a Real Estate Empire While Playing Trophy Wife." Derek texted me after it ran, "Was any of it real? Did you ever actually love me?" I thought about responding, then deleted the message. Some questions don't deserve answers. Others, the answers are too complicated for text. The truth was, I had loved him. Loved him enough to make myself smaller so he could feel bigger. Loved him enough to hide my light so his could shine brighter. But that's the thing about love built on illusion, eventually, someone turns on the lights. Now, in my office overlooking the Hudson, surrounded by photos of properties I'd rescued and renovated, I finally felt like myself. Not the genius hiding in plain sight. Not the trophy wife with a calculator for a brain. Just Gemma Aurora, real estate developer, business owner, and proof that sometimes the best way to win a game is to let everyone think you're not even playing. My lawyer had been right about one thing, staying quiet during the divorce proceedings had been the smart play. But she'd been wrong about the reason. It wasn't about letting Derek think he was the breadwinner. It was about the look on his face when he realized he never had been.